I learned this too late, and I wish someone had told me earlier, because for a long time, I believed the same thing most people believe. I believe that if you work hard enough, long enough, success will eventually come. I believed effort alone was enough. I believed that if you stayed busy, stayed loyal, stayed disciplined, money would naturally follow. That belief kept me moving, but it also kept me blind. Because what I slowly realized after years of watching people struggle and a few people quietly succeed is that money doesn't follow hard work. And the people who never learn those rules spend their entire lives wondering why effort never turns into freedom. When you're young, hard work feels powerful. You put in extra hours, you sacrifice sleep, you say yes when others say no. And for a while, it works. You get praised, you get promoted, you feel useful. But then something strange happens. You look around and notice people who don't seem to work harder than you, yet they are moving ahead faster. They have more control over their time, more options, less stress. At first, you assume they're lucky or connected or just smarter. That's what I told myself. It was easier than accepting the truth. The truth was that they were playing the same game I was playing. I've spent years inside technology, business, and leadership, and I've seen this pattern repeat again and again. The hardest workers are often the most exhausted, not the most rewarded. They become reliable, dependable, and busy, but not wealthy. The system rewards them with more responsibility, not more freedom. And slowly, without realizing it, they build lives that require them to keep running just to stand still. That's when you realize something is wrong, but by then, habits are set and fear is stronger than curiosity. Hard work is not useless. Let me be clear about that. Hard work is necessary, but it's not sufficient. Hard work without direction turns into grinding. Grinding turns into burnout. Burnout turns into regret. Money doesn't care how tired you are. It doesn't care how many hours you worked. It responds to leverage, timing, positioning, and decisions. And those are governed by rules most people never learn because they're not taught in school, they're not rewarded early, and they don't feel fair. I remember watching engineers, brilliant people who gave everything to their work. They were loyal, intelligent, committed. They believed that if they just kept delivering, the system would take care of them. Some of them did well, but many didn't. They capped out. Their income plateaued. Meanwhile, others took different paths. They focused less on effort and more on ownership, less on hours and more on systems, less on approval and more on long-term value. They weren't louder, they weren't flashier. But over time, the gap became impossible to ignore. The most painful lesson is realizing that effort feels like progress even when it isn't. Being busy feels productive. Sacrifice feels noble. But money doesn't reward nobility. It rewards outcomes. And outcomes are shaped by structure, not just intensity. This is why so many people reach their 40s and 50s confused. They did everything they were told to do. They worked hard. They stayed honest. They waited their turn. And yet, the financial security they expected never fully arrived. I learned this too late because early success hides the problem. Hard work pays at first. It gives you momentum. But then the returns diminish. More effort produces smaller gains. And instead of questioning the model, most people double down. They work even harder. They sacrifice more. They tell themselves this is just how it is. That's when the trap closes. Money follows rules, not effort. It means effort must be applied within the right framework. Think of it like physics. You can push a wall with all your strength, but if there's no leverage, nothing moves. Add a lever, and suddenly small force creates massive motion. Money works the same way. The rules are the levers. Hard work is just the force. One of the biggest lies we're taught is that fairness matters in outcomes. It doesn't. Fairness matters morally, but markets don't operate on fairness. They operate on value creation, ownership, scarcity, and timing. This is uncomfortable to accept because it means effort alone doesn't guarantee results. But once you accept it, something powerful happens. You stop blaming yourself and you stop blindly pushing. You start thinking. I've watched people change their entire financial trajectory not by working harder, but by understanding one key rule and applying it consistently. I've watched others ignore the same rule and stay stuck for decades. The difference wasn't intelligence, it wasn't luck, it wasn't background, it was awareness. Awareness changes behavior. The reason most people never learn these rules is simple. They don't produce quick wins, they don't feel exciting, they don't give instant validation. In fact, following them often makes you look slower at first, less ambitious, less impressive. And that's why they work. They filter out impatience. They reward discipline quietly. When I say I learned this too late, I don't mean I failed. I mean I could have avoided unnecessary stress, wasted years, and false beliefs. I could have built differently earlier. I could have asked better questions sooner. Questions like, why does money flow to some paths and not others? Why do some people gain freedom while others gain obligations? Why does income rise but peace never arrives? The truth is, money follows structure. It follows rules about how value is created, captured, and protected. Hard work only matters after those rules are in place. Without them, effort leaks away. With them, even moderate effort compounds. In the next part, I'll start breaking down the first of these 5 rules. Not theories, not motivation, real rules that quietly govern how money actually moves. Rules that explain why some people break free while others stay busy forever. If you understand them early, your life changes direction. If you ignore them, effort alone won't save you. This is not about becoming rich fast. It's about stopping the slow mistake of working hard in the wrong direction. I learned the first rule the hard way, and I learned it by watching people around me, not by reading books or listening to speeches. Money does not follow effort, it follows ownership. This is the first rule most hardworking people never understand because ownership is quiet and effort is loud. When you work hard but own nothing, you are always dependent on someone else's system. You are rewarded when the system needs you and forgotten when it doesn't. I've seen people work 10, 12, even 14 hours a day for years building someone else's machine, believing loyalty would eventually turn into security. But loyalty without ownership only buys you responsibility, not freedom. Ownership does not always mean owning a company or real estate. Ownership means having something that continues to create value even when you stop working for a moment. It could be equity, intellectual property, a system, a brand, a product, or a skill that very few people can replace. The moment your income depends entirely on showing up every day, you are running on a treadmill. You might get faster, but you never move forward. Money flows toward what can scale, not what gets tired. I watch this pattern repeat in technology again and again. The people who built platforms, tools, or systems eventually gained control over their time. The people who stayed only as workers, no matter how talented, eventually hit a ceiling. That ceiling is not about intelligence, it is about structure. When you understand this rule early, your decisions change. You stop asking, how can I earn more this year? And start asking, what can I build that still works when I step away? Hard work matters, but only after ownership is in place. Without ownership, effort leaks. With ownership, effort compounds. That is why 2 people can work equally hard and end up in completely different places. One is renting their effort, the other is investing it. The second rule is one that almost everyone misunderstands because it sounds too simple, but it controls everything. Money follows value, not time. Time feels valuable because it is limited, but markets don't pay for time. They pay for results. They pay for solutions. They pay for things that remove pain, save effort, or create advantage. When people sell their time, they limit their income by the number of hours in a day. When people sell value, income becomes disconnected from time. I learned this by watching products outperform people. A single piece of software could do the work of hundreds. A good design could replace weeks of labor. A clear decision could save millions. And yet, the people who created these things were often not the ones working the longest hours. They were the ones thinking about leverage. They asked, how can one action create many outcomes? This rule changes how you approach learning. Instead of asking what job pays the most right now, you ask what skill creates the most leverage. Skills like communication, systems thinking, problem solving, and decision making scale across industries. They increase your value in every room you enter. Time-based skills expire. Value-based skills compound. Most people confuse busyness with usefulness. They fill their days and feel important, but importance does not equal value. Value is measured by impact. One clear insight can be worth more than a year of effort. One well-designed process can replace thousands of manual steps. When you understand this rule, you stop trying to prove how hard you work and start focusing on how useful your work actually is. The third rule is uncomfortable, but it separates people who build wealth from those who stay busy forever. Money follows positioning, not struggle. Struggle feels meaningful. It feels honest. But markets don't reward suffering. They reward placement. Where you stand matters more than how hard the ground feels under your feet. I have seen people struggle in the wrong place for decades. They were skilled, sincere, and committed, but they were positioned in industries, roles, or systems that did not reward upside. Meanwhile, others moved strategically into growing fields, emerging technologies, or high-leverage environments and advanced faster with less visible struggle. It wasn't luck, it was awareness. Positioning is about being close to growth, close to decision makers, close to capital, close to learning curves that matter. You do not need to be the smartest person in the room if you are in the right room. But if you are in the wrong room, intelligence alone won't save you. This is one of the hardest lessons because it forces you to admit that effort alone cannot overcome bad placement. When I understood this, I stopped asking why something was hard and started asking whether it was worth being hard. Some paths are hard but lead nowhere. Others are hard but lead somewhere meaningful. Wealth grows where momentum already exists. Swimming against a current may build character, but it rarely builds wealth. The fourth rule is, when people resist emotionally, money follows patience, not urgency. Urgency feels productive. It feels like action. But urgency often leads to bad decisions, rushed investments, poor partnerships. The people who build real wealth are almost boring in their patience. They wait, they observe, they prepare. And when they act decisively. I've seen urgency destroy more wealth than mistakes. People rush because they are afraid of missing out. They chase trends at the top. They jump into things they don't understand. They abandon good paths because progress feels slow. Patience is not passive. It is disciplined waiting with preparation. This rule explains why so many people enter markets late and leave early. They arrive when excitement is high and exit when fear takes over. Money moves in the opposite direction. It flows to those who can stay calm when others panic and stay still when others rush. The fifth rule is the most misunderstood of all. Money follows consistency, not intensity. Intensity is exciting. It looks impressive, but it burns out quickly. Consistency is quiet. It rarely gets attention, but it wins over time. Wealth is built through repeated correct behavior, not heroic effort. I have seen people make massive progress through small daily actions repeated for years. And I have seen others make big moves once and then disappear. Consistency builds trust. Trust attracts opportunity. Opportunity creates leverage. This is not dramatic, but it is reliable. When you understand this rule, you stop chasing motivation. You build systems. You design routines that work even when you are tired, bored, or distracted. You stop depending on emotion and start depending on structure. These 5 rules changed how I see money, not as a reward for effort, but as a response to alignment. Alignment between ownership, value, positioning, patience, and consistency. Hard work still matters, but only when these rules are respected. Without them, effort feels noble but produces very little. With them, even ordinary effort can produce extraordinary results. I learned this too late, but understanding it changed everything that came after. I learned another painful truth much later than I should have, and it took years of watching patterns repeat before it fully sank in. Money follows decisions, not intentions. Most people have good intentions. They want to save more, invest better, learn skills, start something meaningful, or change their financial path. But intentions do not move money. Decisions do. And decisions are hard because they require commitment. They close doors. They create responsibility. They force you to live with consequences. Intention feels safe because it keeps all options open. Decision feels dangerous because it removes excuses. I have seen people talk about plans for years. They study, prepare, discuss, and wait for the perfect moment. They believe they are being careful, but what they are really doing is avoiding discomfort. Money moves toward people who decide early and adjust later, not those who wait until certainty appears. Certainty never appears. Markets move. Technology changes. Opportunities fade. The cost of waiting is invisible at first, but over time it becomes enormous. Good decisions are rarely dramatic. They are often boring and uncomfortable. Saying no to lifestyle upgrades. Choosing long-term learning over short-term comfort. Walking away from paths that feel safe but lead nowhere. These decisions don't make headlines, but they quietly shape outcomes. When I look back, the moments that mattered most were not the ones where I worked hardest, but the ones where I chose differently than the crowd. Another rule that becomes obvious only with experience is that money follows focus, not multitasking. The modern world rewards distraction. People wear busyness like a badge of honor. They juggle multiple goals, projects, side ideas, and responsibilities, believing that more effort and more directions will eventually pay off. In reality, divided attention produces divided results. Wealth requires depth. Depth requires focus. I've watched people with average talent outperform extremely intelligent people simply because they stayed focused on one direction long enough. They didn't jump every time a new opportunity appeared. They didn't chase every trend. They built something slowly, improved it steadily, and allowed compounding to do its work. Others scattered their energy, always starting, never finishing. Years passed, and nothing solid was built. Focus is not about doing less work. It is about doing fewer things that matter more. When you start from zero, focus is your greatest advantage. You cannot afford to waste energy on distractions disguised as opportunity. Every yes costs something. Every commitment pulls time and attention away from something else. People who understand this choose carefully. People who don't feel busy but remain stuck. Another truth I learned late is that money follows courage, not comfort. Comfort feels safe, but it limits growth. The most important financial moves I've seen always involve discomfort at the start. Changing industries, starting something new, speaking up when it was easier to stay quiet, taking responsibility instead of waiting for permission. Comfort keeps you where you are. Courage moves you forward. Courage does not mean reckless risk. It means thoughtful risk. It means accepting temporary uncertainty in exchange for long-term opportunity. Most people avoid this because uncertainty feels like danger. But in reality, staying in a position with no upside is far more dangerous over time. Comfort hides risk, it delays it. Then one day it arrives all at once. I've seen people cling to stable income while their skills slowly became less valuable. They felt safe year after year until suddenly they weren't. Meanwhile, others accepted uncertainty early, learned fast, adapted, and built resilience. They didn't avoid fear. They learned to act despite it. Another rule that experience teaches is that money follows environment, not willpower. Willpower is limited. Environment shapes behavior without effort. People fail financially not because they are weak, but because they place themselves in environments that constantly pull them toward bad decisions. Overspending, distraction, comparison, and fear become normal when the environment supports them. The people who succeed quietly design their environments. They reduce temptation. They surround themselves with people who think long term. They limit exposure to noise. They make good behavior easier and bad behavior harder. Over time, this compounds. Wealth grows not because they are stronger, but because their environment supports better choices. I've watched people try to force discipline while staying in environments that reward the opposite. It rarely works. Change the environment, and behavior changes naturally. This applies to spending, learning, focus, and risk taking. Money flows where structure supports growth. One of the hardest lessons is that money follows responsibility, not excuses. Excuses feel comforting, they protect ego, they explain failure. But money doesn't care about explanations, it responds to ownership. When people take responsibility for outcomes, even when circumstances are unfair, they gain control. Control creates leverage. Leverage creates opportunity. People who blame systems, bosses, markets, or timing often stay stuck because blame removes agency. Responsibility restores it. This doesn't mean the world is fair. It means progress only begins when you accept control over what you can influence. I've seen people with terrible starting conditions outperform those with advantages simply because they took responsibility early. Another truth is that money follows learning speed, not experience length. Years alone don't matter, learning does. Some people repeat the same year of experience 10 times. Others compress learning into a few intense years and leap ahead. The difference is curiosity and humility. Those who keep learning stay relevant. Those who stop fall behind quietly. Markets reward people who can adapt. Technology rewards those who can learn quickly. Money flows toward those who update their thinking instead of defending old beliefs. This is uncomfortable because it requires admitting when you are wrong. But that discomfort is far cheaper than being left behind. By this point, the pattern should be clear. Money does not follow hard work alone. It follows ownership, value, positioning, patience, consistency, decisions, focus, courage, environment, responsibility. Hard work is still part of the equation, but it is no longer the driver. It is the engine that only works when the direction is correct. I learned this too late, but understanding it changed how I see effort forever. Work became intentional. Time became valuable. Decisions became clearer. And money stopped feeling random. It became predictable. Most people are taught one simple idea from childhood: work hard, stay honest, keep your head down, and money will eventually come. It sounds fair, it sounds comforting, and it is completely incomplete. Because if hard work alone created wealth, the poorest people in the world would be the richest. Farmers working from sunrise to sunset, laborers destroying their bodies, parents juggling multiple jobs just to survive, they work harder than almost anyone. Yet effort by itself does not decide where money flows. Money follows rules, invisible rules. And once you see them, you cannot unsee them. One of the most painful lessons in life is realizing that effort and reward are not directly connected. They are only loosely related. Effort without direction creates exhaustion. Effort without leverage creates limits. Effort without ownership creates dependency. This is not unfairness. This is how systems work. Money moves toward value, scale, control, timing, and positioning, not toward sweat, not toward intention, not toward how badly you want it. The first truth most people realize too late is that money rewards problems solved, not hours spent. The world does not pay you based on how tired you are at the end of the day. It pays you based on how valuable the problem is that you are solving and how many people benefit from that solution. Someone who solves a small problem for one person will always earn less than someone who solves a painful problem for millions. This is why a simple piece of software can generate more wealth than decades of physical labor. It is not because the software creator worked harder every day. It is because the solution scaled. Scale is one of the quiet rules of money. If your effort can only be sold once, your income has a ceiling. If your effort can be multiplied, repeated, copied, or distributed without you being present every time, your income detaches from your time. This is why products, systems, code, media, ownership, and intellectual work change lives. They allow one decision, one build, one idea to keep working long after the effort is done. Hard work starts the process. Scale finishes it. Another rule people learn late is that money flows toward ownership, not participation. Employees participate. Owners decide. Participants trade time for certainty. Owners trade risk for upside. There is nothing wrong with participation early in life. It teaches skills, it builds discipline, it creates stability. But staying there forever limits you. When you do not own the outcome, you do not control the rewards. Ownership does not always mean starting a company. It can mean owning equity, owning skills so rare they give you leverage, owning distribution, owning an audience. Money follows control because control shapes outcomes. Many intelligent, capable people remain stuck because they confuse being busy with building something that compounds. They fill their days with tasks that reset to zero every morning. Emails answered yesterday do not help today. Hours worked last week do not produce income next month. This creates a loop where survival consumes all attention. Money does not escape that loop easily. It escapes when effort is invested into something that grows while you sleep. Another rule is timing. The world does not reward everyone equally at all times. Entire fortunes are created when technology shifts, when behavior changes, when costs drop, when access expands. Those who position themselves early do not need to be the best. Late arrivals can work just as hard and still earn far less. Timing is not luck alone. It is awareness. It is paying attention to where the world is moving instead of where it has already been. People who study trends instead of headlines position themselves ahead of demand. Money also follows clarity. Confused effort produces scattered results. Clear direction produces momentum. Many people say they want money, but their actions show they want comfort, approval, and safety more. Money grows when you are willing to tolerate discomfort, uncertainty, and delayed reward. This is why progress often feels lonely. Most people quit when results are invisible. Those who understand the rules keep going because they know the math works even when emotions do not. Another quiet rule is that money avoids desperation. When you need money urgently, you lose leverage. You accept bad deals. You rush decisions. You trade long-term gain for short-term relief. Financial pressure narrows thinking. This is why building margin early matters. Savings are not just security. They are strategic power. They allow patience. They allow choice. They allow you to say no. And saying no is often what protects future wealth. Money also follows trust, not promises, not appearances. Trust built through consistency, reliability, and long term thinking. People with trust attract opportunities without chasing them. They are offered partnerships, information, access, and leverage that others never see. Trust compounds just like capital. Break it once, and the cost lasts for years. Protect it, and it quietly works for you. The final truth is uncomfortable but freeing. Money is not moral, it is not emotional. It does not care how good you are or how hard your story has been. It follows incentives, systems, and value exchange. Once you stop expecting fairness from money and start understanding its behavior, you stop fighting reality. You stop blaming effort. You start redesigning your actions. Hard work is not useless, it is necessary, but it is only the entry ticket. What changes lives is where that work is placed, who benefits from it, how often it can repeat, whether you own the result, whether it grows without you, whether it aligns with where the world is going instead of where it has been. When people finally understand this, the behavior changes. They choose skills with leverage. They build assets instead of only income. They think in years, not weeks. They seek ownership over approval. They stop asking how hard they should work and start asking where their effort will echo the longest. Money does not follow exhaustion, it follows structure. Learn the rules early, and effort becomes powerful. Ignore them, and no amount of effort will ever feel like enough.